Hello, Meoni here, and welcome back to another video for Final Fantasy XIV. This time we're looking at the Tokyo Fanfest once again, but this time the first day of media interviews with Naoki Yoshida, the game director and producer of Final Fantasy XIV. All of the information regarding these interviews, and indeed the press conference in itself, will be linked in the description as usual. So without further ado, let's go through these questions, read them out to you, so if you're commuting today or just don't want to read through it yourself, you won't have to miss out on any of these details. The first question then, the footage of the Crystarium town seemed to resemble the MMO tech demo that was shown in E3 in 2005. Is the Crystarium linked to the 1.0 remake somehow? Yoshi replies, I didn't think people would notice this quickly, he laughs. We'll talk about this in tomorrow's developer panel. The two guests there created the world you've been adventuring in since 2.0, and it will be a fascinating session with a section focused on how the Crystarium was designed. If I talk about it now, the dev panel will have no impact, and then laughs again. The second question, what will Dancer's main stat be? Apparently, since it's a ranged DPS, probably dexterity, since the gear is already compatible. The follow-up question is, that means we'll have 4 jobs using dex. Have you considered moving, say, ninja to another category? Yoshida replies, and then laughs. Please wait until mid-May for more information. But you haven't told us anything yet. He replies, as far as the battle system goes, I think it's difficult to understand a single change by itself. It's been 6 years since 2.0, and many systems are linked together, so changing one part affects many others. If I explain just one change right now, it might result in misunderstandings. The May live letter will explain changes to the battle system, each job, and each role. And of course, there will also be a media tour for the press to get hands-on experience with the changes. Interviews regarding that should wait until then. With Gunbreaker revealed as tank, many players thought that a healer would be announced next. Why did you decide to make Dancer a ranged DPS? It's not that we had no plans for a healer, but rather than making Dancer a healer, for Final Fantasy XIV expansions we prioritized the player's game experience. It was decided early on that we would add a new tank because main tank and off-tank roles are poorly balanced when there are an odd number of tank jobs. Just for example, if we have 2 MT jobs and 2 OT jobs, but we have only 3 tank jobs, then even if we make them capable of doing both, because of their advantages or disadvantages, it tends to lead with a 2-to-1 ratio. We felt that it would be easier to balance with 4 jobs. We also wanted to add Gunblade as an iconic FF weapon that would appeal to people who hadn't tried an online Final Fantasy yet. When we were deciding what the other role would be, the last remaining options were a 3rd ranged DPS or a 4th healer. However, we were struggling with balancing the 3 existing healers, and Scholar was always dominant because of the theory. Even if we rebalance them again for 5.0, and even if they also have the shield healer versus pure healer dichotomy, we thought it would be better to solidify the balance between the 3 healers instead of trying to balance 4. By adding a 3rd range DPS, we could round out the number of jobs per role. Will Final Fantasy XIV's Dancer be similar to 11's or something new? It's new. For ability names and effects and such, it's Final Fantasy XIV style to sprinkle in elements from past Final Fantasy games, but while it may give the impression of past Dancer jobs, 14's will be a unique experience that is similar yet dissimilar. Samurai was the same way. We went with 11's warrior type samurai to a Ronin wearing a casual kimono, and fleshed out the design and concept as such. Similarly, we want Final Fantasy XIV's Dancer to be unique, whilst also evoking nostalgia. It looks like Dancer will have the same animations for both male and female. Did you consider differentiating them? If we do that for one job, then people will tell us to do it for the other jobs too. There were also memory concerns because job actions have to stay in memory for instant playback. If we allocate extra space for animations because of a certain job, then all of the jobs will get allocated the extra space even though they're not using it, and we absolutely cannot have that. Will male dancers also dance sexily? Gender is a difficult issue right now, and personally I don't like the stereotype that dancing equates to sexiness. The reason why dancers dance is explained as part of a job quest and is part of the world folklore, and this reason doesn't differentiate between genders. They dance to encourage their allies and defeat their enemies, and the encouragement dances don't have anything to do with being sexy. Dancers in real life have a long history behind them, and many of them come from gender stereotypes of how males or females should be. If we reference them too much, then the animations will lean too far one way or the other. So when I saw the first examples, I told them, don't do that. It's fine to use certain step elements, but if you adopt the movements themselves, then the gender distinction becomes too much. So it was difficult to work with. This is a difficult era. Why did you ask Tatsuya Nomura to do the character designs for the new high-end raid? And what were the player reactions? First of all, I think Tatsuya-san is a true genius in his character designs, in his settings, and his worlds that he comes up with through those characters. As a fan, I feel ashamed that online Final Fantasies don't really have that essence. Since he's so busy, I wasn't sure how much he'd be able to do, but I made a quick request back when he drew us an illustration for Realm Reborn's 3rd anniversary. Last summer I asked if he could design one of the key characters for the new raid Eden, and he said it'll probably be okay. Although it actually seemed to be quite a struggle, he laughs. But he came through for us, and not only is it a very Tetsuya design, it's also going to push us to adjust our modelling in order to recreate it in Final Fantasy XIV. The younger Final Fantasy fans are very familiar with Tetsuya-san's art, so I hope this will help them continue to enjoy 14 as a Final Fantasy theme park. Tetsuya-san worked on 11 early on, but he hadn't done anything for 14 yet, so I begged him to, and he gladly agreed. I think the monsters he's working on right now will also be incredible, but it'll be a long time before you'll be able to see them, he laughs. The next question. We haven't heard anything about what kind of story Eden will be. Is it related to 5.0's story? Yes. Think of it as a raid that takes place in the first world, not in the source. The raid is based upon a major problem that you'll be tackling in this first world. So far we've gone through Bahamut, Alexander and Omega, and this time we'll be returning to a very basic Final Fantasy element, a classic FF style raid if you will. Anyway, we're putting together the first set of floors, and we have some mechanics that will confuse or surprise you. They're so good that the developers were grinning with pride when they came to show me. Will you be using some kind of new content to show the system where defeating Sin Eaters restores weather and nighttime? As you progress through the main storyline, you'll unlock areas and restore night to them. It'll be like there's light oppressing you from all sides, and the Warrior of Darkness paints over it with darkness. Since story progression differs by person, different players may see the same area in different ways. So it'll be an individual mechanic? Yes, it's linked to the MSQ. Will we be able to travel between the first world and the source? It's possible with the Warrior of Light's power and the Echo. It's an extremely convenient setup, he laughs, but the Echo allows you to cross between dimensions and parallel worlds. During the Warrior of Darkness arc in patch 3.4, the former Warrior of Lights from the first world abandoned their lives to come to the source, but there is a way to move without doing that, which will also be explained in the MSQ. You can think of it as something that amplifies the power of the Echo. Relax, your Warrior of Light won't be dying, he laughs. Once you've gotten there, you'll be able to teleport. Will teleporting cost gil? Please think of it as maintenance costs for the teleport system. I'm sure there will be questions like, is my gil valid currency in the first? And what happens to Allegan tomestones if there wasn't an Allegan Empire? But Rowena isn't even there. But the setting will be written in a way that makes sense. Will there be tomestones that aren't Allegan? We hope our solution will impress you. The act of travelling to the first world and the source itself are both going to be connected to the gameplay experience. The development team made a big fuss, asking what to do for this and that. For example, what are we going to do about the retainers? He laughs. Why were you so insistent on adding a beast-like race, the Hrothgar? The great thing about MMORPGs is that people from around the world can all come together and play. Final Fantasy games have good-looking men and women, but Final Fantasy X is an example of a stronger look. Guin Saga may be a better example. But at any rate, since we're creating a fantasy, I want to shine a spotlight on that aspect as well. Even if we added another handsome race, I felt like the only real difference would be the ear shape. Back when we showed off a basic sketch of a wolfman, a lot of players around the world voiced their desire for a wolf race in 4.0. At our current patch rate, with that much equipment data being released, and adding a new race multiplying the amount of work required, we could probably only add one more race with our current workflow. We agonized over which race to add, and ended up with what you see now, and the lion t-shirt I'm wearing now, he laughs. With the two new races' unique heads, how will their headgear work? It won't be displayed, because those face parts wouldn't work in 14's system if headgear were involved. Even Viera ears would have had to be moved down to where the Makoto ears are. It would have been meaningless if you couldn't go all out creating characters from these new races, so we decided that helmets wouldn't be necessary. You can equip them, but they won't be displayed. However, things that will replace the head are okay, like the snowman head, the fat chocobo head, etc. No glasses. The default is it won't be shown, and only things that replace the head are okay. We'll make more things compatible over time, bit by bit, but they won't be compatible at launch. Are there NPC Viera that wear glasses? Even if they tried to make them, I think I would have stopped them. It leads to players complaining that the NPC can wear them, but they can't. I want to think of a way to reduce development costs for this eventually, when the dev team isn't so busy. When did you decide to implement the female-only Viera and male-only Hrothgar? It was during Return to Ivlis, around 3 months after 4.0. Viera was confirmed then, and Hrothgar came about at the same time when we were discussing plans with Matsuno-san. We were deciding whether to make a Hrothgar female or a Viera female, and after selecting Viera, work began right away, because otherwise we wouldn't make it in time. As mentioned before, the face parts are special, and Hrothgar has big differences between its faces, like a lion face, a wolf face, a leopard face. It became a fixed model relatively recently. Viera was done right before Paris Fanfest, and Hrothgar was done recently. How big are the Hrothgar and Viera? Vieras are taller than Rogadins, but are Hrothgar bigger too? Since the Hrothgar have hunched backs, it depends on your definition of bigger. If they stand up straight, I think they'd be taller than Rogadins. They are also more muscular than Rogadins, so they are well suited to armor, and have a heroic look. Will also be completely different depending on how the players create them. We argue a lot over what the default setting in the character creator should be. They seem relatively smooth for a beast race. Can we make them hairier? No, it's not possible without hardware and graphics engine improvements. If we added fur, it probably wouldn't run. Business Division 5 does have a fur engine, but once you put 3 together it stops working. However, we do plan on using textures to make them look that way. I think you'll find it works better than expected when you try it out for yourself. We learned the shocking truth that Lalafels, or rather dwarfs, are considered a beast tribe in the First World. It was the Gallian Empire that defined the term beast tribe. Does the Gallian Empire exist in the First World? If you think about it, the word beast tribe exists in Japanese too. Similarly, you can think of it as a standard vocabulary in the First World too, used to refer to species that are less civilized than humans. The Gallian Empire didn't designate them as a beast tribe, they just don't fit in with the rest of the First World. The law book also goes into this. What's considered a beast tribe depends on the era and the politics at the time. For example, if the Gallian Empire had conquered the entire source world, they may have designated all other races as beast tribes. Do dwarfs say rally-ho? Let's not go there. Do the beast tribes in the First World summon primals? Do they even need them? Who knows? Since it's a split-off world, there's a high possibility that the phenomenon of summoning a primal by using a lot of ether and praying hard could occur in parallel worlds as well. Whether this relates to primals appearing in 5.0 is a different story. Do dwarves look that way because of historical dwarfs? Yes, if the dwarfs accept you as their ally, then perhaps one day you'll be able to wear dwarf helmets as well. If you do, then you'll look just like one of them. Earlier I saw someone on social media mentioning how the white mage Lamimi didn't wear a beard and helmet despite coming from the First World, and there is a reason for that too. Will the dwarfs have Beast Tribe quests too? It's possible. The dwarfs also have factions which fight each other, although from our eyes it might look like a children's fight. You might see quests revolving around mediating between them. Does the MSQ change if you go to the dwarf space as a Lalafell? Remember, you're not wearing a helmet or beard. They might think of you as a dwarf that's abandoned dwarven laws. This is one of the interesting points about creating a new world and fantasy. Is that linked to why their houses are Lalafell sized? Maybe not. Lalafells are popular around the world. In 4.0, when we showed the Aura tribe's living arrangements in the Azim Steppe, we had people wanting to see Makote and Elezen homes as well. This time we went with Lalafells, or rather dwarves, which we felt would have the most impact. Does it affect the quest progression? Don't worry, it won't. Otherwise people would think we're ridiculously money hungry, telling people to buy Fantasias in order to do the main storyline. He laughs. Will the plump Makote in the trailer be playable? Will we be seeing plump versions of the other races? He laughs. There are many different body types in the world, and before we couldn't represent all of them due to cost, but now we're starting to look into different body types for races, starting with the plump Makote. You'll be seeing them in the MSQ, so please give us your honest feedback. Please tell us about the scale of the first world. How big are the areas compared to the Stormblood areas? It won't be less game content than Stormblood, perhaps a little bigger. The areas are fairly dense, and Novrant is comparable to the 3 states of Eorzea. To put it simply, Novrant is around the same size as what's called Eorzean in the source, and everything else has been taken over by the light, resulting in an empty, pure white space taking up the rest of the world. You'll be able to experience this in the areas as well. We showed a map called Am Aranj in a previous keynote, which is where the light is barely being kept at bay. That area surrounds the Novrant region in a circle, and everything outside is whiteness with no elements. Is the Eden illustration that white land then? Who knows, he laughs. In previous expansions you added different forms of travel like flying and swimming. Does Shadowbringers not have anything like that? Not this time. Instead, we're focusing on the game experience of repainting the world with darkness. Well, the only thing left that I can think of is zero gravity floating, so that can wait until we go to the moon, he laughs. Although, if you were to ask me what makes that different from flying, I wouldn't have an answer for you. And yeah, it's not much different from being underwater. Instead of adding new forms of travel, I think I'd rather go in a different direction, like content where everyone is flying regardless of job. And the final question, is reforming the world the core component of Shadowbringers? Everything is based in the MSQ, even the trust system. As usual, we want to expand 14 by an entire new RPG's worth of content this time, with emphasis on that RPG part, as an immersive story that you can play by yourself, which is something that you don't really see in normal MMO RPGs. So there you go, some interesting points. What specifically drew my attention is the idea that the 2 new races, the Hrothgar and Viera, will have these unique heads, but specifically that you won't be able to show anything on them apart from things that directly change the head. I wonder if this goes to full gear sets such as the sort of Alexandrian tanking gear which would consume your head, or other helmets that change the size of your head and hide your facial features. I wonder if they'll be considered allowed or not. Otherwise you're going to end up with this full set of bulky armor and then just an exposed head. The idea of not having glasses on the Viera is going to be quite interesting, and I think a lot of people will probably change their minds about Fantasiaing to them, at least based on those limitations to the glamour system which we didn't know about previously. Either way, let me know what you think about this. The storyline sections are incredibly hype. I cannot wait to see more or hear more about the differences between the source and indeed the first world, the lore implications, why the hell there's a crystal tower. All of this stuff I'll try and source information from upcoming interviews, and we'll try and put them on the channel. Hopefully this was entertaining. Hopefully it was worth a listen if you are commuting. Have a good day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.